Gentlemen, we do not stop till nightfall.
What about breakfast?
We've already had it.
We've had one, yes. What about second breakfast?
Hello and welcome. This is a new series. We're calling it Second Breakfast. Basically, the idea is that it's meant to be a secondary alternative offering to lighten the dark. Basically, the idea is that on this podcast type of show, I'm going to be introducing one specific focused topic and talking about it for about 10 minutes, going super in depth on it, and hopefully analyzing it from a more competitive viewpoint. So I hope you find this to be interesting, as always. Alright, so our topic for today is going to be Angmar. Now, Nova has come and gone, and I wasn't actually there, but I have heard that there were only 1 or 2 Angmar armies. I'm not sure if it was 1 or 2, but either way, there were 60 plus players at Nova, and Angmar is one of the game's core armies, so I would kind of expect that there would be more than 1 or 2 Angmar players at the entire tournament. I thought it was a little bit weird. Now, the thing about Nova is that Nova is a tournament where the comps are restricted, and so you can only take from your army list, with a couple of exceptions. And when Angmar is taken as its own army, pure Angmar, it actually begins to fall apart slightly, I found. It's one of those armies where you see it a lot, but it's not truly Angmar. It always has different things added in, Black Numenorians, or Half-Trolls, or Watchers of Karna, or it's just the shade in a different army, really. So before I really dive into my analysis of Angmar, I'm going to say the thoughts I have on army building, if you will. Not army building, actually. Just specifically what makes an army good, what makes an army bad. Now, obviously, all armies have strengths and they have weaknesses. And I think a lot of people focus on how these two balance out. And I think what defines an army is how the strengths and the weaknesses balance out. I don't actually think that that is the case. I believe an army is defined by its strengths. Weaknesses are something that the player compensates for. They play around the weaknesses, they play down the weaknesses. But strengths are something you can't create. If you have an army that isn't good at one thing, you can't make it good at that thing just because you're a skilled player. Strengths are like the tools you have in your toolbox. And I think that is really the approach you need to take when analyzing armies. An army is a toolbox. Now, obviously, a craftsman is only as good as his tools, and the tools are only as good as the craftsman, so player's skill intertwines with this very well, but you need to think of the army you're using as a toolbox. And that's why Magic is so popular. It's really a Swiss Army knife. You throw it in there, it doesn't take up much space, and it has so many different applications. Now, obviously, Magic's weakness is that it can only do one of those things at a time, but it's still just so powerful to have the option. Alright, well, now you know my philosophy on what makes an army good, what makes an army bad. So let's dive right into the analysis on Angmar. So, first I think we should explore what it means to play Angmar, and I mean pure Angmar here. When you select Angmar as your army in a competitive setting, I believe that you are making a statement of heroes. And what I mean by this, I think in order to understand what I mean by this, we need to first look at the troop choices. We have access to a small, albeit not entirely tiny, selection of troops, but definitely one of the lowest for one of the core armies in the game. But it's not quite so bad as Easterlings or Numenorians. So what we have are the Orc Warrior, the Orc Tracker, the Warg Rider, the Spectre, and the Cave Troll. First thing we notice is that the first 4 of those are from the Mordor army list as well. The only troop choice not found in Mordor is the Cave Troll. That's pulled straight from Moria. More of just 20 points more, Mordor has access to the Mordor Troll, which has fight, strength, and defense 7, and is ultimately a far more effective investment. So right there we see Mordor's troops options kind of matching or exceeding Angmar's, with one key factor to note. Mordor has about twice as many options as Angmar. In addition to access to Angmar's entire roster, Mordor has Morannons, Spiders, several varieties of Uruk, and of course my personal favorite, the Black Numenorians, and that's just to name some. So it's for that reason that I say picking Angmar in a competitive setting is a statement of heroes. You're saying that the Angmar heroes you will take are going to compensate for the fact that troop-wise you are objectively speaking fielding a more limited Mordor with little punch or staying power. So now we have to turn to the hero section of the army list. We are blessed with a whole ton of heroes, most of which are worthwhile, but again, they pale in comparison to Mordor. First we have the Orc Captain and Shaman, both solid choices, both in Mordor. Then, in the case of the Captain, Mordor gets a Morannon Captain, or a Taskmaster, or a named Captain like Brishnok and Gorbag as well, which are also superior choices, even to the Angmar one. Next we have our 3 Ringwraiths, the Witch King, the Tainted, and the Drummerlake. The Witch King and the Drummerlake are both amazing, and most lists will include at least one of them, but again, they're both in Mordor, so there's no distinction that Angmar gains from them. So what do we have? We have 4 entirely unique heroes, 4 heroes which no other army in the game has access to. So when you take Angmar competitively, you're saying that you can leverage the access to those 4 heroes to overturn the massive disadvantage this army is having compared to Mordor. And in truth, I don't think that's a statement that holds up. So first, what we have is Gullivar. You get flying, strength 8, and it's an insanely nasty combination when you factor in access to brutal power attacks. That being said, he'll never really be worth his points. 200 points for defense 5 with no fate. You can never really justify that fully, regardless of the offensive stats attached. It's simply never going to be reliable. He'll be dead and 200 points will be gone in any game you're playing against archery. So next up, we have the good old Barrow-wight. He's in a bit of a similar position to Gullivar. Against archery, he's very vulnerable with 1 wound and no fate, and against any Legolas, you can already kiss him goodbye turn 1 or 2. Even in his dream scenario, he's still a little bit spotty, as he requires the support of another caster to sap will and ensure that he actually gets his paralyze off, which means he doesn't really serve well as a lone caster at low points, which is when I would want to take him. So maybe you take 1, but they're going to end up as a point sink just as much as they succeed. So I don't really consider them to be an asset. So that leaves 2 heroes left. And this is where things get good, because we have Burdr. So what does he bring? He brings Might on a monster at a very affordable price tag. The closest thing in points and purpose that Mordor has is the big beefy version of Shagrat, who for the same price tag brings a touch more survivability but misses out on all the great utility of having brutal power attacks. I'll take Burdr over that any day. And while the Mordor Troll Chieftain is certainly powerful, it's really far too costly to be compared to Burdr. Now I've been talking Burdr up, but here's the issue. You can only take him once, seeing as he's named. Yes, he's objectively worth his points. Yes, he will pay them back every time. Yes, he is consistently man of the match. But again, ultimately, a single cave troll with some might points can't have an impact on the entire battlefield. And so he's unable to justify Angmar alone. While he is certainly an asset, he doesn't entirely fill the gap between Angmar and Mordor. So here it is. It's the end all be all. It's what you've all been waiting for, and it's, let's be completely honest, it's why you took Angmar. It's the shade. We've all seen it behind Blackguard, behind Watchers of Karna, behind Reavers, but we don't really see the shade beyond Orcs. And why is it so often that we see the shade with all these other, infamous units? And I think it's because it does more for them. Many people assume that because Reavers are excellent units and the Shade is an excellent unit, you should take them together, because excellent plus excellent is double excellent. But that's almost an understatement. You take them together because it's not excellent plus excellent, it's excellent times excellent, for want of a better way to put it, and you end up with excellence squared. The greatness of these units does more than simply combine, they actively enhance one another, and the key to this is the fight value. When you possess a higher fight value than your opponent, a Shade is devastating, as it means you will win any fight automatically on a roll of 5 or 6. From a 2-attack model with spear support, it's nigh impossible to lose. But a Shade loses a lot of its potential effectiveness when you have a lower fight value. Because what it then does is it effectively swaps your fight values. I get it, -1 sounds incredibly scary, but when the opponent has a higher fight, all it does is make it so that you will win ties, which, as you all know, is the effect of fight value. Is it worth it still? Absolutely. Being able to treat your orcs like they're fight 10 is wonderful. Is it enough? No. All it does is compensate for the fact that fight 3 is as high as Angmar warriors can go. And Angmar needs more than just compensation. It needs advantages, it needs strengths, it needs options, it needs tools in its toolbox. And that is why I believe that Angmar needs some changes. And I mean, this is especially when you consider that the Shade is, let's be honest, probably going to get nerfed in the next edition. We're going to go even farther down in power levels, a pure Angmar force. So something has to change if Angmar is going to be viable. So what, right? Well, first, I think Mordor actually needs to be stripped of options, making Angmar a little bit more exclusive. I would take away Spectres from Mordor, so that only Angmar has access to them, as well as making the Dwemer Lake and the Tainted Angmar exclusive heroes, with no access to Fell Beasts. Obviously, the Witch King would still need to be in Mordor, because he's the Witch King. Mordor would of course still have access to vanilla ring wraiths, so the lore wouldn't really be hurt by this, but I think it makes a lot more sense to have the unique ring wraiths kind of spread out within the factions that they're unique to. Next, I think we need a new profile for warriors. Men of Karn-Dûm would fit. I could imagine something like a Black Numenorian stat line, but with light armor and 2 less courage for maybe 2 points less. I think that would sound fairly reasonable. And finally, we need a new hero. And what I'd like to see is a new Witch King profile, with Mordor getting to keep the old one. Maybe call him Witch King, leader of the forces of Angmar. I don't know. You could think of something, definitely. I think, like the Tainted and Dwemer Lake, he would be stripped of a Fell Beast option. I think it fits more with the Angmar force and the look, and then we get to see that amazing horseback model with the flaming sword more often. I just think it fits more visually. And what I'd imagine for this profile is kind of a combat sorcerer for a large bulk of points, coming standard with his crown and with some new spells. I'd even say ditch all the old spells, even transfix, make them really unique, give him offensive spells like Chill Soul and the Curse spell from the Hobbit rulebook. I think that would just be a really cool, really unique profile, and he'd need to be a whole bulk of points, of course. But that's just kind of my wish list for Angmar. And, take my suggestion there with a grain of salt. I haven't thought extensively about those changes balance-wise, but what I do know is that something does need to change. Because right now, Angmar as pure Angmar just isn't a viable option. You're handicapping yourself when you take it. Alright, so I hope you enjoyed my long-winded musings on Angmar. Did I overlook something? Am I right? Please let me know in the comment section below. Also, let me know what you think of the idea for this new series is, and different ways that I could improve it. Any topics you'd like me to cover. The idea with this series is that I can take one topic and just kind of go in depth on it. It can be an army, it could be a list that is submitted to me, it could be a vaguer concept or something I find interesting about the game. So yeah, just leave a comment, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.